Number 10. Throg. Starting the list off light. He might be small, but he's still pretty mighty. Throg wasn't always a frog. In fact, at one point he was a human named Simon Walterson. He ended up getting help from a witch, but after being unable to pay her, found himself transformed into a frog. Don't you hate when that happens? He befriended Thor back when he was also transformed into a frog by his brother Loki. The two teamed up to help a frog king defend against an army of rats. Simon would go on to become his own version of Frog Thor after a piece of Mjolnir was broken off. This tiny piece was wielded by Simon, who decided to become his own version of the hero while in his frog form. As a frog, he goes by the name Puddle Gulp as well. Puddle Gulp. So if you ever see Puddle Gulp or Simon, that's the Throg. Hey. Number 9. Thunderstrike. While Eric Masterson isn't more powerful than 616 Thor, he was still pretty powerful in regards to general power. He was considered worthy enough to wield Mjolnir and for a time was merged with Thor, in essence becoming that hero. However, he's probably better known for his time as Thunderstrike, when he wielded an Uru-crafted mace. He was fairly short-lived as a character, but whether he was Thor or Thunderstrike, he had powers similar to other Asgardians while in his transformed state. He was super strong, durable, tough, quick, and had a healing factor. In addition to that, with his Thunderstrike mace, he was also capable of teleportation, possibly on a multiversal level, which I think is pretty powerful. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you are loving our channel, be sure to show some love for us by heading on over to Facebook and giving us a follow over there. Number 8. Warthor. Warthor is the name that Volstagg took when he became Thor. This all went down during the time that Jane Foster was Thor and the usual 616 Thor was simply known by the name of Odinson. Volstagg became Warthor due to him seizing the Mjolnir of an alternate reality, which was unclaimed. This version of the hammer, however, seemed to have some kind of effect on his mind, as it made him, kind of violent and severe in comparison to how Thor would usually act. Probably hence his name Warthor. After light elf refugees were attacked by fire demons from Muspelheim, he ended up going to Muspelheim itself, actively taking on the whole realm in battle and threatening to wipe out all life there with a massive flood. Jane Foster as Thor was forced to fight against Warthor and eventually managed to ascertain that he was Volstagg, using her friendship with him to calm him down. Number 7. MCU Thor. Thor in the MCU is pretty powerful, although he still seems to be on a journey towards becoming the most powerful he can ever be within this universe. Recently, he grew quite a bit when it came to his power levels, as he was forced to find a new way to harness his power when separated from Mjolnir, which was destroyed by his sister Hela. Hela destroys Mjolnir at the beginning of Thor Ragnarok, forcing Thor to channel the power within himself and earning him the nickname of Sparkle Fingers from the Grandmaster. Since then, Thor lost an eye but managed to protect his people against Hela and the inevitable destruction of Asgard via Ragnarok, using this prophesied end to basically defeat his sister. So although Asgard is destroyed, it lives on in Asgardians. Yay! Thor was unfortunately no match for Thanos in space, although he did actually almost defeat Thanos in Infinity War single-handedly, although yeah, I guess in the end he didn't. However, he did go on to find a home for his people under the leadership of Valkyrie on Earth, creating sort of a new Asgard, if you will. We don't know where he's off to next, but it is possible we could see him take up the mantle of leader from Valkyrie, finally accepting his own fate as the next Allfather and inevitably taking Odin's place. That is after he goes on some adventures with the Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm sure. The Asgardians of the Galaxy? Number 6. Ultimate Thor. Ultimate Thor was an interesting version of the character. He hails from the reality of Earth 1610, and initially we were led to believe that this alternate wasn't actually even Thor, but instead was just a guy who kinda like thought he was Thor and was possibly suffering from delusions, who was named Thorleif Gorman. He had a suit which helped him to fight against his enemies. Over time, it would be revealed that Thorleif Gorman was indeed the latest incarnation of Thor Odinson, as memories came flooding back to him. This version of Thor wasn't as reliant on Mjolnir as some other versions of Thor are, which makes him in some ways more powerful. Also, that suit. Number 5. Jane Foster. Simply known as Thor, and for a time known in terms of her series as Mighty Thor. While we know this version of the character was actually Jane Foster, at first in the comics it actually was a mystery as to who the woman behind the hammer was. Jane Foster became Thor after Thor Odinson was deemed unworthy, with the hammer actually calling out to her. This was also at a time that Jane was sick with cancer, so she had to be strong in many different ways. And it was exceedingly impressive that she decided to remain as Thor, considering the revelation that each time she transformed transformed into the hero, her body was actually cleared of all toxins, including her chemotherapy treatments, meaning that every time Jane became that hero, she in essence went back to square one with her treatment, making her sicker and sicker over time. Jane even chose to continue being Thor when her life was at stake, and she did end up dying, sacrificing herself to protect the world against Mangog. Fortunately, she would be resurrected by Odin afterward and become known as the hero Valkyrie, which is also like a really big moment for Jane Foster since Odin, up to that point, never really liked Jane. He was always giving her a hard time. Number 4. Herald of Thunder. This version of Thor folks will be most familiar with, probably from the game Fortnite, but he's actually inspired by Donny Cates' current run on Thor, who exists in main continuity. So even if you're like, Herald of Thunder, that's a Fortnite thing. It's actually also a comics thing. Just like in the comics, Thor is convinced by Galactus to join up with him as a threat greater than Galactus is apparently on its way, known as the Black Winter. The Black Winter is literally a cosmic sort of, well, winter storm that in essence destroys everything it touches with its snowfall. So, like snow, but if it was like a whiteout for existence instead of just, small frozen bits of water. Much worse than snow. In the game Fortnite, Thor agrees to join Galactus in his fight against Black Winter and becomes his Herald of Thunder, becoming imbued with the power cosmic. Number 3. Rune King Thor. Rune King Thor, although often referred to as an alternate version of the character, is actually from the main continuity. He's more like a very distinct period in time in Thor's life, which ends up in essence getting somewhat reset. In other words, he's kind of main continuity, kind of alternate continuity. What makes him so powerful? Well, this is a version of Thor who comes to be because he's facing Ragnarok and looking for a way to stop it. He ends up gaining the power of the Odin Force and rune magic as well. He gains the Odin Force after Odin dies. Again, Odin has died a lot. Then there is a whole tangential reality that ends up being created where this Thor rules Earth, but I guess technically that's also like now an alternate future version of this version of Rune King Thor. So yeah. Oh boy. Anyways, this Rune King Thor would not be able to avoid Ragnarok in the end and would end up being reset as a result of all of the death that was part of that whole colossal event, along with the other gods and goddesses of Asgard. So that's why Thor isn't quite like Rune King Thor right now in the main continuity, despite this version being a part of the main continuity. Because yeah, he like lost both his eyes. So, lost both his eyes, and yet Thor, I think, is back to having both his eyes. He lost both his eyes, then he had his eyes, then he lost an eye. Does he have both of his eyes back now? I don't know. I can't keep track of how many eyes Thor has. Changes all the time. Number 2. All-Father Thor. While many people still say that Rune King Thor is one of the most powerful versions, and he definitely is, I think the real power lies in a potential alternate future version of Thor known as Old King Thor or All-Father Thor, or simply just as King Thor. Any of these names is acceptable and correct. So if you've heard someone say one and you're like, wait, which one is it? It's all, there's like literally 15 to 20 names actually this character goes by, so they're all right. This version of Thor was once believed to be the true future of Thor, but has since been relegated to kind of an alternate future, with him hailing from the possible future of Earth 14412. Although this Thor has alluded to the fact that if 616 Thor was to die, it would actually affect him, so not sure how connected they are still. In this reality, Thor would not only defeat Gorr the God Butcher, Galactus, a souped up version of his brother Loki, a souped up version of Doctor Doom, and an even more powerful returning Gorr the God Butcher, but he also at one point wielded the Phoenix Force. This all went down after All-Father Thor faced off against Old Man Phoenix, his friend Logan, who had become the host of that force. While Thor lost that fight, the two ended up teaming up together to save Earth from a version of Doom who was super power boosted by various artifacts and powers that he'd been collecting. In the end, Phoenix sacrificed himself to pass on the power of the Force to Thor so that he might stand a chance in defeating Doom, which he ultimately did. Number 1. Herald of None. Herald of None is technically the Thor we have in main continuity currently. This is a period in Thor's life where he basically took all of Galactus's power in order to defeat Black Winter, going from his herald to kind of like renouncing Galactus and ultimately defeating him so that he might destroy the Black Winter, which threatened the existence of everything in the multiverse and the multiverse itself. Doing this allowed Thor to be successful in taking out Black Winter, reducing it to a mere snowflake, one single snowflake. This snowflake also allowed Thor a glimpse into a potential future when it melted on his hand, where he saw Thanos had returned, leading perhaps an army of undead Marvel heroes who were under his influence as he wielded an Infinity Stone encrusted version of Mjolnir. I don't know if we know yet about this future, when it's coming to pass, but I love when comics are like, look at this future, this could happen.
Coming in at number 10, we got the Scarlet Witch from the Onslaught Reborn universe. which is a copy of Counter-Earth from Heroes Reborn. She has all the same powers of Earth 616 Wanda and is one of the most powerful magicians in the Marvel Universe, able to conjure and counter spells. This version of Wanda also possessed something called Witch Sight. Witch Sight is the sight, which is basically a magical kind of vision that allows Wanda to be able to see things others cannot, and also perceive invisible and intangible people or objects. In this dimension, the Scarlet Witch is a member of the evil team known as the Masters of Evil. But under unspecified circumstances, Wanda left the Masters of Evil and became an Avengers member. This Scarlet Witch is practically the same as the 616 one though, and doesn't do anything particularly crazy, so number 10 she goes. Number 9. Gypsy Witch. All of the members of the Avengers were affected when Morgan Le Fay released her reality distortion wave. The distortion wave altered the time period for everyone into one that was honestly a pretty cool medieval setting. All the Avengers' clothes, thought processes, and speech patterns changed to fit into this setting. Scarlet Witch was one of the only ones though who retained her memories, as her powers countered those of Morgan Le Fay. She was kept imprisoned, but despite that fact, she was still able to use her power to reach out and unlock the memories of a few of the Avengers that had now become the Queen's elite guardsmen. She also pumped power into Wonder Man, and with the other Avengers' willpower, shifted reality back to the way it should be and simultaneously defeated Morgan Le Fay. Number 8. Brother Mutant. Unlike almost any other versions of Scarlet Witch, Scarlet Warlock was a male version of the crazy powerful character from Earth 127, appearing in Exiles issue 85 from 2006. But if he wasn't already powerful enough with those powers, he was combined with this world's versions of Wolverine, Magneto, Quicksilver, and Mesmero to become Brother Mutant when he attempted to imbue Magneto with Wolverine's adamantium skeleton. Brother Mutant became a single entity with all their combined powers, and he swore to end the life of every non-mutant on Earth. Multiple teams of alternate versions of Wolverines were sent here to try and correct the mistake that was this being ever existing, and they almost all failed, except for the last group of Wolverines who, alongside the Exiles, were finally able to bring him down. Eventually. Number 7. Ultimate Scarlet Witch. The Scarlet Witch from the Ultimate Comics universe of Earth 1610 could teleport, fly, and create far more powerful disruptions with her powers thanks to her actual mutant ability of probability manipulation, which required her to do the math to assess the probability of an effect she wanted to make happen, which is such a nerdy but cool way to see her power. She was a more considered and patient Scarlet Witch, and she never lashed out in the same way the Earth 616 one did. And she even helped lead the Brotherhood of Mutants for a while, all the while keeping in touch with Charles Xavier to promote a more peaceful mutant-human integration, which is really nice. She did also have magical abilities which she inherited from her mother, the Witch of Wundagore, Magda. Wanda didn't really have control of her magical abilities though, which was obvious since she unintentionally used them to bend time and space to summon dinosaurs to the Savage Land. That sentence alone is pretty still cool though, so yeah. Number 6. Age of Apocalypse Wanda. The original Scarlet Witch in the dark dystopian timeline of Age of Apocalypse died, but she was cloned by human scientists later on after the mutants had kind of become the leading force in the world. She was resurrected specifically to redo her most devastating act from Earth 616. You know, the one where she erased almost all mutant powers? And she really got close to doing it too. It honestly seems like she was more powerful than the regular Scarlet Witch, considering she had just been cloned and already had access to the same level of power she had when she was going to get rid of mutant powers. And she was a conduit for the life force at that time, so yeah, that's kind of insane. But unfortunately for the Humies, the effect of the No More Mutants spell had a range of about 12 feet. Or so. And after she used the spell, she fell down lifeless, so ha! Joke's on you, humans. Number 5. Silver Witch. The Silver Witch is one of the most powerful variants of the Scarlet Witch thanks to combining her tremendous magical ability with the power of her brother Quicksilver. The Silver Witch is one of the fastest superheroes in Marvel Comics, and she hails from the Earth TRN-852, or the 2021 Heroes Reborn universe, where the Avengers never formed, meaning her and her brother never reformed, and they joined some mutants protesting a bill that would force mutant registration, which led directly to the fight where Wanda absorbed and bonded Pietro's power with her own after he passed away fighting Blur, one of the members of the Squadron Supreme who replaced the Avengers. She was crazy powerful, but was also still pretty mentally disturbed. She could fire hexes at about 1,000 miles per hour, and she could fire 1,000 hexes a minute, which is just an insane thought. She removed part of Blur's soul and banished him to the Dread Dimension. She was eventually imprisoned in the Ravencroft Institute, but the speed of Quicksilver mixed with the magically chaos magic of Scarlet Witch, good lord. She also looked positively dashing, but you know. Number 4, Weapon Hex. Warp World. To really oversimplify it and cut out a lot of the details, there was a time in the story known as Infinity Wars where Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, folded reality in half, merging souls together and creating a new reality known as Warp World. Some really cool characters came from this, including Laura Kinney as Weapon Hex. This character is an amalgamation of X-23 and Scarlet Witch. In this world, she was the 22nd attempt to create a vessel for the dark eldritch demon, give me a sec, Mephistopheles. Nope, Mephistopheles. I got it. Mephistopheles. Who is a combo of Mephisto and Chthon, and who has an absolutely evil name that I hate with every inch of my soul. Why would you do this to me? Sarah Kinney, though, was impregnated with a mutant girl, combining the evolutionary's best enhancements and enchantments. She had a regenerative healing factor, retractable bone claws, chaos magic, including Scarlet Witch's hexes and magical abilities, plus necromancy. She was pretty crazy powerful and super cool, and she was a part of Warp World's Defenders. Number 3. MCU Scarlet Witch. I've said it before, but the MCU nerfs the heck out of most of Marvel's characters. It's upsetting to me, but at the same time, I guess I get it. Having said that though, I think the MCU Scarlet Witch is actually a pretty heavy hitter in comparison to other alternate versions of herself. She handicaps the whole of the Avengers team, sending Hulk into a rampage in Age of Ultron. She sends Vision hundreds of meters deep into the ground in Civil War. She almost completely defeats Thanos by herself in the battle in Endgame. And in WandaVision, she warps reality of an entire town and magically creates her own children. Now, I'm gonna spoil some things about the new Doctor Strange, so you have about 5 seconds to skip to the next point starting now. Alright, if you've seen this movie, you know she is crazy as hell. She is in possession of the Darkhold and is using it to try and basically steal the children of another alternate Wanda. To do this, she uses demons and creatures from other realities trying to capture America Chavez and steal her power to hop through realities. She single-handedly and successfully assaults the Camartage, which was being defended by a literal army of magic users, including Wong and Doctor Strange. She brutally defeats a whole team of the Illuminati from another reality in moments, while inhabiting the body of that reality's Scarlet Witch, and she has Doctor Strange and America Chavez on the run for the whole frickin' movie. Oh, and she looks like Elizabeth Olsen, so that's a superpower all on its own. Number 2. House of M. When the Avengers were deciding how to deal with Scarlet Witch, her brother Quicksilver came to her and influenced her to alter reality to make everyone's desires come to be. Sort of. And to change reality so that she was safe and everything was hunky-dory. She created a whole new reality called the House of M that saw her and her family being the rulers of Earth with her father Magneto in charge. That alone is an insane feat. The reality wasn't completely perfect though. Other than a few heroes having some problems and humans being hunted down by mutants, a few characters, namely Wolverine, could sense that something was up, and that this was not the way things were supposed to be. Once the Wolverine-led resistance unveiled the truth to everybody, Magneto, in a rage, used his powers to end Quicksilver's life in a pretty brutal and intense few comic panels. This broke Wanda even more than she already was, and it caused her to say one of her most famous lines: "No more mutants." This little sentence caused 986,618 of the mutant population of Earth to lose their powers completely. Coming in at number 1, it's the Scarlet Witch from the Disassembled event. Now, I know this is the 616 version of Scarlet Witch, That is technically a variation, and it's very easily the most powerful one. For me, a big part of what shows that, other than creating the House of M a whole new reality, is the Avengers Disassembled event. Wanda and Wasp were just chilling by the pool when Wasp mentioned Wanda's kids. And the only problem is that the existence of her children had been wiped from her mind. And when Wasp brought it up, it brought all those memories back, and Wanda absolutely lost it. Several things happened next, with none of the Avengers even knowing the cause. For starters, Scott Lang Ant-Man was killed when a previously deceased Jack of Hearts showed up and detonated. While the heroes were trying to figure out what just happened, Vision showed up saying that he was not in control of himself and that he is sorry, as he also began to detonate. Then Jennifer Walters' She-Hulk began to get uncharacteristically raged and tore Vision in half. Next, we see Tony at a UN conference randomly start to act as though he was incredibly drunk even though he hadn't had a drink, and he verbally accosted the Latvian ambassador and threatened him. Then, a whole invasion of the Kree just randomly came out of nowhere, resulting in the passing of Hawkeye, and then the Kree just randomly left as quickly as they showed up. All of that was Wanda Maximoff using her magic. It almost led to the superhero community deciding to put Wanda into the afterlife, and led to her creating the House of M reality. Number 10. X-Men 1602. You know I gotta talk about this Neil Gaiman and Marvel collaboration yet again. One of the central conflicts within Marvel's 1602 story is the subject of witch breed, in other words, mutants. This story takes the adversity that the regular X-Men face in modern times and amplifies it to about 10, having the mutants be the main victims of this timeline's Spanish Inquisition. Mutants are hunted down and treated in the most horrible medieval ways. Standing against this horrible treatment were a version of the X-Men led by Carlos Javier, or this Earth's King Charles I, who refers to them as Mutantur, or Changing Ones. The team was made up of Werner, aka the Angel, Henry Hal McCoy, Brother Petros and Sister Wanda, Scotius Summer Isle, Roberto Trefusis, and the wee apprentice John Grey. Now, this may be a basic team of X-Men, but all of these characters are very powerful in their own right, and in an Elizabethan world that can barely even comprehend them, with limited technology to even oppose them, they're even more powerful in retrospective.
Number 9. Giant Size Little, or Earth 71912. Formerly known editorially as the X-Babies, the X-Men of Earth 71912 are an alternate multiversal version of the X-Men as created by Scotty Young and Guri Hiru. Young's take on the Marvel Universe generally sees famous teams reinvented as little kids, like in his original take on Avengers vs. X-Men, where baby teams of Avengers and X-Men fight one another over a teddy bear named Bucky Bear. While they were once babies, this X-Men team has seemingly grown up, a little bit at least, appearing as young children now. We also see this version of the X-Men and various mutant heroes and villains appearing in the Infinity comic written by Scotty Young, Giant Size Little Marvels, with art by Dax Gordine. While this team is technically just kids, that doesn't mean they aren't capable of making powerful moves. It just means that their world is governed by more kid-like and kid-friendly rules and confines. However, I have no doubt that the Giant Size Little X-Men could still kick butt in other universes as well, should they need to. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, please head on over to Facebook, where you can also show us some love by clicking that like and clicking that follow and all of the Facebook stuff.
Number 8. X-Men 2099. As the fourth incarnation of the X-Men in this universe, with basically no connection to classic characters or plot threads other than being inspired by the ideas of Charles Xavier, the nature of the 2099 X-Men team created by John Francis Moore and Ron Lim, first appearing in X-Men 2099 #1 in August of 1993, makes them one of the most creative and interesting versions of the team ever. The team comes together at the end of the 21st century, led by Desert Ghost, who has the ability to break down molecular structure with his left hand and heal even lost limbs with his right hand. He had a vision for a new future for mutant kind, and his team is made up of completely new characters like Cerebra, who has the abilities of Cerebro basically, and the ability to manipulate a person's nervous system, or Skullfire, who had ambient energy particle absorption. All the members of this X-Men team have unique powers to take on the grim corporate rule future of this timeline.
Number 7. Marauders. Marauders has to be one of my favorite X teams we've had in a long time. They weren't always so amazing and heroic though. The Marauders was initially a name taken by Mr. Sinister's band band of mutants, who were pretty evil. The same mutants behind the Mutant Massacre, where many Morlocks were killed, and Angel, one of the original X-Men, got properly messed up. Poor Angel. Recently though, the Marauders' name was reclaimed by Kitty Pryde, now known as Captain Kate Pryde, the Hellfire Trading Company's Red Queen. Kate leads her Marauders team in an effort to fight mutant injustices the world over. Where there are mutants who are being kept from Krakoa or oppressed, her and the Marauders fight to free them. They also operate in trades, making deliveries the world over to ensure Krakoan-based goods and products like medicine and whiskey are delivered to Krakoa's trade partners.
Number 6. Asgardian X-Men. In What If number 12 from 1990, we get a little taste of what would happen if the X-Men had stayed in Asgard after their adventure during the Asgardian Wars in X-Men Annual number 9. Cyclops puts the X-Men to a vote, with the winning majority deciding whether to stay in or leave Asgard. Now Loki sent the losing majority home to Earth while allowing the winning majority to stay in Asgard. The result is an Asgardian X-Men squad that disperses among the Asgardian society, and it is so cool. Nightcrawler becomes a member of the New Warriors 3, or I guess 4. Sunspot becomes an Asgardian warrior, Danny Moonstar becomes a member of the Valkyrie, Ilyana Rasputin becomes the Enchantress, and above all of that and more, Storm becomes the Goddess of Thunder, with a version of Mjolnir becoming one of the most powerful versions of Thor in the comics ever. The X-Men becoming gods of Asgard with all the support of the already existing gods? Helheim, yes. Sorry, that's a bad joke, sorry.
Number 5. Age of Apocalypse. In the alternate reality of Earth 295, known as the Age of Apocalypse, the X-Men were one of the final superhero teams standing against the villainous tyrant known as Apocalypse. Of course, because it's his age. In this reality, many other superhero teams were wiped out, and Magneto became the leader of the X-Men in Charles Xavier's stead after Professor X was killed when Legion traveled back in time and attempted to end Magneto. Charles put himself in the way of the kill shot, thereby dying and erasing Legion from existence, while also creating the Age of Apocalypse reality, where Apocalypse attacked Earth years earlier than in the main timeline. While Magneto's X-Men roster from this reality would change over time, the original roster consisted of Iceman, Storm, Colossus, Jean Grey, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch, of course. Really the only X-Men team the once mutant children of Magneto have ever been on. Later on, the team would be joined by AOA Wolverine, known as Weapon X, and Rogue, who would later also become Magneto's lover and eventually wife in this reality.
Number 4. Excalibur. Excalibur first appeared in Excalibur Special Edition number 1 by the legendary Chris Claremont and Alan Davis in December of 1987. They are a government-sponsored team of extraordinary mutants who fight for the people of jolly old England and their interests around the globe. The team is usually formed by British heroes and former members of the X-Men, and was originally assembled with hopes to carry on Charles Xavier's dream and legacy. But their adventures usually deal with magical and interdimensional crises linked to the pocket dimension of Otherworld. The team right now is made up of Captain Britain Betsy Braddock and formerly Captain Britain Brian Braddock, Nightcrawler, Shadowcat, Phoenix, Magan, Captain Avalon, Gambit, Gloriana, Jubilee, Richter, and Shatterstar. But the team has included awesome heroes like Black Knight, Colossus, Dazzler, Juggernaut, Lockheed, Moira McTaggart, Rogue, and Sage, and was reformed under Apocalypse as a mutant diplomatic organization in Krakoa, the UK, and in Otherworld. One of the best X-Men adjacent team variations ever, in my humble opinion.
Number 3. X-Force. In principle, X-Force should be one of the most powerful teams out there because they usually aim to kill. But there are some other teams on here that are known for having simply more Omega level mutants on their most powerful rosters, which is why I hesitated to put X-Force too close to the top, although they're pretty up there still. X-Force initially, though, started as Cable's team, who himself is known for being on the verge of Omega level, possibly the techno-organic virus being one of the main things holding him back from that status. The X-Force was originally Cable's Black Ops team, used for taking out those he deemed threats to the timeline, but would later become more known as Wolverine's team, and at one point was also Sabretooth's team. Currently in the comics, X-Force is actually more thought of as Beast, aka Hank McCoy's team, although Wolverine is still a major player on it. There was a recent incarnation of the team that included Omega-level telepath Jean Grey on its roster as well.
Number 2. Multiversal X-Men. Gonna be honest here, this one's a little wacky. As an example, at one point the Kurt Wagner on the team used a collection of hundreds of disembodied Professor Xavier heads to search the multiverse for a habitable planet for the population of Earth 12245. And then he teleported them all to that new world. That alone puts the team high on the list, but the other members just bring the team comfortably to the number 2 spot. A Wolverine that was Governor General of Dominion of Canada, who was in a romantic heroic duo with the demigod Hercules, who gave Wolverine adamantine bones, and who was also on the team. Emmeline Frost Summers, who was granted the immortality of a goddess. Catherine Pride, who goes by Shadow and is as equally powered as her 616 self. A genius disembodied head of Xavier, that's by itself. Corporal Scott Summers, who fought in and ended the American Civil War in 2 weeks, having dispatched about 6,000 Confederate soldiers, and regular old Dazzler. They came together thanks to the villain Savior, but fought against 10 evil Xaviers, including a Witch King and Cthulhu Xavier, that were trying to destroy reality.
Number 1. The Five. The Five have to be one of the most powerful mutant teams to have ever existed at this point in the main continuity, or if not, they would still have to be pretty high up there, I think. The Five are an offshoot mutant team whose job it is to make sure that all mutants are brought back to life. They were brought together to bring back all mutants who had ever passed on previous to the present time and age of the X-Men. Their ranks include multiple Omega level mutants, and they have literally mastered control over one of the most powerful governing principles of the cosmos, that of life and death. I know, it's pretty crazy. Their ranks include Hope Summers, Elixir, Proteus, Egg, and Tempest.
Number 10. Ultimate Doctor Doom. Victor Van Dam of the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610 was caught in the same accident that gave the Fantastic Four their abilities. For Victor, his flesh was changed into an organic metal, his legs became goat-like and his hands gained claws. With his metal body came the power to alter the density and nature of his skin, forming porcupine-like quills that he could even throw at enemies. This Doctor Doom, just like his Prime Earth counterpart, was an intellectual genius and also a powerful sorcerer, showing the ability to summon creatures like the Lovecraftian Civilpogua, which I'm not even going to try and fix my pronunciation of. He also seemed capable of performing Atlantean magic and apparently grew in his magical proficiency since he claimed to be the Sorcerer Supreme of his Earth when facing Jean Grey in All New X-Men Volume 1, number 36 from 2015. Number 9. House of M. In the warped reality of the House of M, Doctor Doom kind of gets everything he wants, minus his mother, and minus world domination, and minus a lot actually. Okay, he doesn't really get anything he wants completely, but he does become really cool, sort of. He allies with Magneto when the human-mutant war erupts, and when the mutants come out on top, Doom took over the kingdom of New Latveria, marrying his childhood sweetheart Valeria. He found a way to combine magic with technology and cosmic rays to empower himself with a liquid metal body that is virtually indestructible and can be stretched and transformed into weapons. He also upgraded his wife with powers to control mystical shadow constructs, and their adopted son with powers similar to the Human Torch. Teaming up with this reality's Ben Grimm called just It, they form the Fearsome Four, a strike force used by Magneto to keep other superhumans in line. Number 8. Doom 2099. The Victor Von Doom of the Dark 2099 stories is surprisingly actually the 616 Doom, but transported to the mind of a younger Latvian man. He maintains all of his intellect and inventive genius, and he also gets some upgrades. His body is infused with nanotechnology, which increases his reflexes and strength considerably. But on top of that, Doom wore a sophisticated nuclear-powered adamantium battlesuit, which granted him superhuman strength, contained jets for flight, housed a personal force field, and discharged concussive force blasts. He could also electrify his armor's surface, which is kinda cool. The armor contained a 4-hour air supply and could be sealed for travel into outer space or underwater. His upgraded armor added abilities that allow him to phase, which the original Doom armor could not. The only downside to this variation of Doom is that he is not as adept in the mystical arts, due in part to memory loss. But He is a genius in physics, robotics, cybernetics, genetics, weapons technology, biochemistry, and time travel. And one last little tidbit, he became President of America, so there's that. Number 7. Infamous Iron Man. After the events of Secret Wars and reality being brought back to normal, Victor Von Doom was unsatisfied with his life, and finding that he couldn't find satisfaction serving himself, even as God Emperor, he decided to switch his morality and try and serve and help others. He took on a bit of a mentor in Tony Stark, whom he had always respected, and when Tony Stark was put into a coma, Doom decided to take his place as the infamous Iron Man, which was a great reason to give us Dr. Doom in a highly advanced suit of Iron Man's Model Prime Mark 51 armor. While also being the coolest looking Iron Man ever, the armor was retrofitted into Doom's style and was used alongside his magical abilities. So, Iron Man with Doom's magic is basically what we have here. To make things even better, Doom's intellect and sorcery were near their peaks during this period in time, so he is truly an incredibly powerful hero, even if he does kinda go back to his old ways eventually. Number 6. Sorcerer Supreme. On Earth 938, the setting of the 1989 What If issue 52, when Doom failed to rescue his mother's soul from Mephisto, he sought out the Ancient One to learn and train in the mystic arts and be able to finally save her. Now, during the time of his training, he becomes extremely powerful, reaching a level of mystical magical power that made him worthy of being Sorcerer Supreme, while also still being a technological genius and master schemer. He, alongside the Ancient One, freed his mother from Mephisto at the cost of the Ancient One's life. When Mordo tried to take out Doom, Doom implanted a microscopic device inside Mordo's head that would detonate if Mordo ever crossed him again. When Stephen Strange came to seek help from the Ancient One for his damaged hands, Doom just cut them off and replaced them with robotic ones. And he eventually banished the Dread Dormammu from Earth after he invaded. That last feat did fatally wound the new Sorcerer Supreme though, but using his Doombots, he kidnapped Dr. Stephen Strange and used his own personality and memory to overwrite Strange's, turning Strange into a copy of Doom, ensuring his legacy would live on and he could continue to be the Sorcerer Supreme in a new body for basically ever. Number 5. Dr. Juggernaut. Heroes Reborn! Welcome to a world where Tony Stark never built an Iron Man armor, where Thor is a hard-drinking atheist who absolutely despises hammers, where Wakanda is nothing but a myth, and where Captain America was never found in the ice because there were no Avengers to find him. In their place, this world has always been protected by Earth's mightiest heroes, the Squadron Supreme of America. Just like the Justice League, but Marvel. This team does battle with crazy foes, one of which being Dr. Juggernaut. Now, if you haven't guessed by now, yes, this is a world where Victor Von Doom took possession of the Gem of Sidorak. And again, yes, this is as completely awesome as you might think it is. His story is one of revenge. He used to be the king of Latveria before that pesky squadron jumped in and turned the government into a democracy with fair elections. Ugh. Doom came in last, and he was eventually banished to the negative zone, but came back with sights set on not just his kingdom, but the whole world. With the powers of Dr. Doom and the Juggernaut, this guy was capable of going up against frickin' Hyperion. He led the Masters of Doom, putting him in charge of crazy powerful villains like Algog, which is Mangog with the powers of Odin, which is just a Black Skull, who is Red Skull plus Venom, and Silver Witch, which is self-explanatory. Oh, and Thanos. Number 4. Doom the Living Planet. The legends go that Dr. Doom of Earth TRN-157, the world of Astonishing Spider-Man and Wolverine, sensing that the end was near, decided to transfer his consciousness into the one thing big enough to contain his absolutely massive ego: a planet. This Doom, the living planet, could travel through space at the speed of light and manipulate matter on a cosmic scale. He also had the means to launch massive planet-wide invasions with an army of Doom bug bots. Now, to be completely open and honest with you, he doesn't last very long in this story. But that's only because he is shot by Wolverine with a weapon that harnesses the entire power of the Phoenix Force and was made for the sole purpose of destroying planets. But the panel where he was floating over New York and bellowing, "Doom hungers," So cool. Number 3. Otto Werner von Strange. In Devil's Reign Superior 4, we see one of the most powerful versions of Doctor Doom. And the funny thing is, he is combined with one of the villains you wouldn't think to be all that powerful. This Doctor Doom is combined with Dr. Octopus. So that's an interesting combo, but he's also fused together with Doctor Strange. There are a lot of doctors here. Yes. This Doom from Earth 8968 has become Sorcerer Supreme, and he is able to subdue Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Hulk, and regular versions of Doc Ock. He is easily able to best 3 of the strongest Marvel heroes at the same time. He has total command of the forces of magic and better control over his mechanical arms than the original Otto does. He can manipulate the multiverse, communicating and casting spells over different realities, and can even pull the other Ottos to his own Earth with a simple gesture. By his own volition, he has liquefied Shumagorath, had Dormammu grovel at his feet, and burned Null to ashes. These are all cosmic level threats that many times got close to destroying Earth 616 and its universe. Number 2. End of Time Doom. Earth 14412 is home to a Doctor Doom who is more than just a Sorcerer Supreme. He is the Fist of Iron, the Starbrand Supreme, the Master of Mystic Vengeance. He is the End of Time Doom. He has powered himself up with the Starbrand, Iron Fist, the Eye of Agamotto and Cloak of Levitation, and a Spirit of Vengeance. In this reality, King Loki had destroyed all of humanity, with Doom being one of the few survivors. King Thor and his 3 daughters, the Goddesses of Thunder, restored life to the earth, and Doom came to conquer it. Naturally. He completely stomped the 3 granddaughters of old King Thor, who themselves were powerful enough to destroy Omnipotence City, and he was only stopped when old King Thor, who wielded the Odin Force, or more specifically the Thor Force, was also empowered by the Phoenix Force. Also, this Doom looked incredibly cool, but he was still not as powerful as the number 1 spot. Number 1. God Emperor Doom. During the events of the incursions that would lead to the most recent Secret Wars event, Victor Von Doom, with the help of Molecule Man, gains the powers of all the Beyonders, a race of beings from beyond the multiverse responsible for basically everything there is, and powerful enough to destroy Marvel's various cosmic entities, so that he could forge the remnants of the multiverse together into Battleworld and rule it as God Emperor Doom. While empowered by Molecule Man, God Emperor Doom had the powers of reality warping, matter manipulation, energy manipulation, plus all the super enhancements and his former powers. But just listing his powers isn't going to suffice. It's his feats that truly prove his power. Other than forming Battleworld or Earth 15513, God Emperor Doom has turned Johnny Storm into the son of Battleworld. He has created a new and improved Eye of Agamotto for Doctor Strange, he's completely disintegrated Doctor Strange, ripped Thanos' spine from his body and turned him to ash, de-lifed the Phoenix Force Cyclops, defeated Black Panther, who was wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, created the hammers of his Thor core, and even gave the Thors their power. God Emperor Doom was the 3rd most powerful being in the entire Marvel multiverse, only being surpassed by Molecule Man and the one above all. Coming in at number 10, 1602. In this alternate Earth, or alternate timeline, Magneto is known as Enrique, or the Grand Inquisitor. He was born Jewish in a Venice ghetto, but was taken in by a Christian priest and baptized. The Christians later refused to let him be returned to his Jewish family, and being unable to be reunited with this family left him psychologically scarred, which I guess led him directly to become the leader of the Spanish Inquisition somehow? He was ordered to execute the witch breed, or mutants to us in the modern age, but he hid those who could pass off as human. Enrique's only known followers are his children Petros and sister Wanda, who are Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, in case you didn't make the connection. And his spy in the Vatican is the Toad. Enrique uses his position to further his needs and curry favor with the influential figures, including King James of Scotland. While Enrique is attempting to have Angel killed, the Witchbreed is rescued by Iceman and Cyclops. If you guys haven't read 1602, definitely do. It's written by frickin' Neil Gaiman. Like, come on. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you drop a like. It really helps us out as a channel and we would really appreciate it. It's on to number 9 with Age of Apocalypse Magneto. In the reality of Age of Apocalypse, Magneto leads this world's X-Men after the death of his friend Charles Xavier, at the hands of Xavier's son David, who traveled back in time hoping to kill Magneto. Magneto and the X-Men fight against the forces of this world's Apocalypse, who, without the interference of Xavier, was able to take over North America. Magneto's team is composed not only of the X-Men but also includes mutants like Sabretooth and other not so good guys. In this timeline, Magneto is married to the mutant Rogue, and together they have a son they named Charles. Magneto and this Charles are later personally captured by Apocalypse himself, though they are rescued by Rogue and the other X-Men, including Nate Gray, who raid Apocalypse's citadel in a desperate final attempt to save all of reality from Macron crystallization. The end fight between Apocalypse and Magneto in this story is so awesome, and Magneto like literally tears the celestial technology out of him. It's just super cool. Number 8, Magneta. On Earth 982, the Age of Heroes happened about 15 years earlier than on Earth 616, meaning most of the events, history, and character history associated with the heroes of Earth 616 also happened 15 years before. As such, a lot of the superheroes of the past, the ones you and I know, have either grown up, grown old, or retired, with new heroes in their place. For Magneto, he doesn't actually show up. Instead, we have a young woman who goes by the name Magneta, and who seems to have all the same powers as Magneto, even dressing similar to him as she considers him her predecessor. She started off as a hero and always spouted the heroic ideologies that Magneto followed, condemning his more negative aspects. But that didn't really seem to matter though, as she eventually went bad anyways and founded the Sisterhood of Mutants as a strike team for mutants against human oppression. Her efforts to recruit a Midtown high school student named Nucleus brought her into conflict with Spider-Girl and the X-People. Number 7, Max Eisenhardt of Earth 8013. In this reality, where Charles Xavier had died in his first encounter with Lucifer, Magneto formed his Brotherhood of Evil Mutants using his children Pietro and Wanda alongside Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Angel, and Beast, who curiously wielded gauntlets that made him some very Wolverine-like claws for some reason, I don't know. These 5 youths were the original X-Men on Earth 616, which makes it really interesting to see them in this strange Magneto-led bad guy team. Together, they actually ended up successfully conquering the world. But then again, they were unable to prevent Galactus from in turn destroying that world, so... But hey, you win some, you lose some, you know? I don't know. Number 6. What if Magneto ruled all mutants? In this what if story from 1996, Magneto leads mutant kind as they float above Earth in space on a sanctuary Magneto established called Avalon. Magneto had decided to let his mutants rule themselves so that he wouldn't be a dictator to them. Unfortunately, a large group of mutants had divided themselves into 2 warring factions known as the Isolationists, who wanted to move Avalon to another star system, and the Annihilates, who wanted to go the easier route of destroying humanity and just taking the Earth for themselves. Magneto had to stop the 2 factions from fighting when they nearly destroyed Avalon. Later, after the birth of the first child on Avalon, Magneto actually manipulated events in order to unite the 2 warring factions together, but on the outside he acted as though he was done trying to get them to work together. What If number 85 from 1996 is certainly an interesting story, and you should definitely check it out. Number 5, Age of X. Max Eisenhardt from Earth 11326 proved to be a master strategist and a radical leader in a fight against the human race. He was a key figure in organizing resistance movements, protests, and he was the leader of both the Brotherhood and the Acolytes. He also supplied the Mutant Liberation Front with intel and logistical support. Now, similar to his Ultimate Universe counterpart, he once attempted to reverse the Earth's magnetic poles, and he would have succeeded if it hadn't been for Tony Stark and Reed Richards, who created technology that thwarted his plans and prevented any further attempts. One of his biggest feats though would be the creation of Fortress X. Magneto, using his powers, literally stole several skyscrapers from New York City and put them together to create a mutant safe haven. It was both a show of force and a mutant rallying cry. Now, after the incursions, this version of Magneto would actually go on to play a key role in the Battle World Red Skull Volume 2 storyline. Definitely a good read there. Check it out. Number 4, Heroes Reborn. Heroes Reborn, Magneto and the Mutant Force Volume 1 on Earth TRN 852 gives us a version of Magneto who set up yet another mutant sanctuary in the form of Island M, and founded and led a team known as the Mutant Force consisting of Frenzy, Jubilee, Rogue, Sabra, Mr. 1, and Mr. 2, including himself. During a mutant protest against mutant registration, a fight broke out with the Squadron Supreme of America, who are like a Marvel's Comics Justice League, if that makes sense. During the fight, Power Princess, who was basically Wonder Woman, killed Professor X and paralyzed Magneto after hitting him in the spine. Magneto, affected by the passing of Xavier, and who kind of took on his whole wheelchair thing, vowed to aid mutants against human oppression. This Magneto variation actually gets his body taken over by Cassandra Nova in a crazy twist of events, and honestly, the whole story is a wild ride from start to finish. Number 3, Ultimate Universe. Everything in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, or Earth 1610, is more extreme for better or for worse. While some fans hate this version of Magneto for being a straight up villain and not the anti-hero the character has become, it is almost impossible to deny that he does show just what Magneto is totally capable of. This version of Magneto is significantly darker and more cynical than the mainstream version, regarding all humans with utter and unwavering disdain and likening them to insects. On several occasions, he has attempted to carry out extreme genocidal plans for the human population using the noticeably larger Brotherhood of Mutants he is in control of. This Magneto has displayed enough power to defeat the Ultimates, including Thor, a literal god, twice. And he was even successfully able to reverse the magnetic poles of the Earth, resulting in the Ultimatum event that was supposed to end the Ultimate Universe, but didn't for some reason, I don't know. Number 2, Brother Mutant. If you are a comic book fan, which I hope you are considering you've made it this far in the video, I highly encourage you to check out the Exiles team if you haven't already. They are a reality hopping team of heroes and sometimes villains that go around trying to fix fractured realities. One such reality that multiple teams of specifically alternate versions of Wolverine have been trying to save would be Earth 127. This reality was one of the many that was accidentally fractured by the explorations of the Timebreakers, and has a few gender-swapped characters including Magneto and his children. On this world, the Scarlet Warlock attempted to transfer the adamantium skeleton of 127's Wolverine into his mother, Magneto, but the Warlock's hex powers inadvertently merged himself, his mother Magneto, his sister Quicksilver, and the mutant Mesmero with Wolverine, creating an entirely new and extremely powerful entity known as Brother Mutant, who sought to take over the world. And in at number 1 is Magneto from House of M. When the forces of Professor X, the Avengers, and the X-Men arrived to defeat or defend the Scarlet Witch, due to her unstable mind and powers, and the influence of her brother, she caused a white flash to go off and used her powers to change reality. Mutants were no longer the minority, free to use their powers, living as proud mutants. All the mutant heroes were now living their perfect lives. Most of the societal changes in this alternate timeline were directly thanks to the strong and successful leadership of the House of Magnus, meaning Magneto and his children. Magneto took the fight to the USA with his fellow mutants. He brought down the SHIELD helicarrier and fought a final battle against the Sentinels in Central Park, defeating them. The President of the United States was captured, and Magneto and Genosha were now the world's premier superpower, with large parts of the world under his control as king. King Eric Magnus was the most powerful individual in the world, if we don't consider the Scarlet Witch, who literally created it all. Instead of mutant oppression, humans were now being oppressed and hunted by alternate versions of Sentinels. Heroes like Luke Cage, Hawkeye, and more tried to rise up and defend the defenseless as a group called the Human Resistance Movement. Number 10, Sideburn the Regenerating Planet. When Galactica, the daughter of Galactus, is looking for her next meal in issue 1 of her self-titled comic, she finds Earth, a lovely little snack. But while looking at her dinner option, she comes upon Wolverine. Realizing his mutant regenerative abilities, she formulates an idea of using a bit of his harvested DNA with a bit of celestial power to create Sideburn the Regenerating Planet, a planet-sized Galactus meal that would grow back after each feasting. The perfect unlimited food source that would give her billions of years of meals. Unfortunately, she just as quickly realizes that a planet made up of Canadian mutant DNA like this would be highly unstable. Unfortunate, because I'd love to see this guy floating through the galaxy of the regular Marvel universe.
Number 9, Cancerous Professor X. In the alternate universe of Earth 10,011, otherwise known as the Cancerverse, death was defeated by life and the ancient eldritch beings known as the Many-Angled Many-Angled One. The heroes of this Earth began to worship the Many-Angled Ones, who transformed the heroes, granting them new powers, but also corrupting and mutating them due to the Many-Angled One's demonic natures. One of the consequences of this was that many of the heroes became deformed by cancerous tumors running amok. Although many of the X-Men were affected, such as Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Storm, the most terrifying of these beings was Professor X, who developed a massive cranium as well as multiple glowing red eyes. Now, Professor X can be pretty creepy at the best of times, but this is taking it to a whole other level.
Number 8. Franken-Castle. After he was taken out by Daken on orders from Norman Osborn during the Dark Reign event, Franken-Castle, yes, the Punisher, was revived by the Legion of Monsters as an undead zombie-like monster known as Franken-Castle. The Legion resurrected Frank to recruit him in their fight against the villain known as Hellsguard, who was systematically killing off monsters using samurai-like assassins. Although he originally refused, Frank got involved after seeing innocent child monsters being dispatched as well, and that is not something Frank is willing to abide. He went on to slay hordes of Hellsguard's men. It's honestly an incredibly interesting moment in Frank-Castle's history, and it got this version of Frank moved to Earth 666. He also nearly enacted revenge against Daken, being stopped by Wolverine before he was returned to his human form through the Bloodstone.
Number 7. Zombie Scarlet Witch. On Earth 2149, things were relatively similar to Earth 616 until one day, a traveler from an alternate dimension showed up at Avengers Mansion, warning of the Earth's impending doom at the hands of an army of the dead. Who was this interdimensional traveler? None other than the groovy Ash Williams from the Evil Dead franchise. The heroes ignore this strange and irritating man, but soon after they discover that the threat is real and they are bitten by the zombie horde and transformed into the living dead. Ash eventually teams up with Earth's Scarlet Witch and Dazzler to try and find the Book of the Dead and save the Earth, but Wanda was eventually bitten by a zombified Punisher and turned into a zombie herself. Now, in the zombie universe, there are plenty of zombie heroes to choose from, such as Captain America, Spider-Man, and even Howard the Duck. But for this list, we decided to go with Scarlet Witch, as her incredible powers make her a terrifying force to be reckoned with under the best of circumstances. But the idea of all that power having an insatiable taste for human flesh is even worse.
Number 6. Ice Giant Thor. In What If Thor in 2018, we got the story of what if Thor was raised by frost giants. Laufey, the king of the frost giants, defeats Odin in their battle so long ago, and just as Odin took the infant Loki, Laufey takes the kid Thor and raises him as his own. Loki is obviously here as well, and like usual, they form a pretty tight bond as adoptive brothers. Unfortunately, due to Thor's strength and skill in battle, not to mention his fondness for summoning the power of lightning, he is praised among the frost giants and by Laufey himself, who begins to completely forget Loki, his actual true son. Instead, Loki finds the captured Freya in the dungeons and she teaches him how to use magic. Loki eventually busts her out of prison and together they attempt to escape to Midgard. They go to the ruins of Asgard and attempt to repair the Rainbow Bridge until Thor and Laufey show up. Loki ends the life of his father while Thor unknowingly ends his mother with a blast from his giant ice hammer, Ice Crusher. Thor almost takes out his brother as well, but at the last minute, he lets him go. We don't know what happens next, only that Loki went to Midgard, had kids and a family, and apparently became a hero. It actually ends on a rather sweet note.
Number 5. Vampire Daredevil. When Magneto's ultimatum wave devastated New York in the Ultimate Universe, one of the victims of the flood was the original Daredevil, Matt Murdock. Feeling that Hell's Kitchen needed its champion, Murdock's old mentor, Stick, sought out Raymond Connor to become Matt's replacement. Like Matt, Raymond was blinded in an accident and developed similar abilities. After being trained by Stick, Raymond took on the Daredevil mantle, using a yellow and red variation of Matt's red costume. This new hero's career was cut extremely short when he was bitten by a vampire version of the Nerd Hulk. This turned the new Daredevil into a terrifying and effective vampire, even managing to bite Captain America and defeat Blade in combat. Thankfully, before he could land the killing blow, he was teleported to Iran Japan, where he perished in the sun.
Number 4. Steel Corpse. In Marvel's Age of X universe, the X-Men never existed to represent mutants, and as a result, the mutant population had become the ultimate enemy. In response to this, the mutant Magneto used his powers to literally steal buildings from New York and form Fortress X, a safe haven for mutant kind. This led to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes by General Franken-Castle and led by Captain America to hunt down this resistance of mutants. Among the members of this team was a version of Iron Man named Steel Corpse. This Iron Man had become infected by a technological virus that fused him with his armor. Inside the armor, Iron Man has slowly been digested by the suit over the decades since he was trapped inside. The worst part is that this group of Avengers eventually decided that they weren't going to attack the mutants who were just trying to survive. So the government takes control of Steel Corpse and forces the suit to attack. It's twisted, it's sick, and it's absolutely terrifying to imagine being slowly consumed by a suit of armor you can literally never escape.
Number 3. The Maker. Despite having his flaws, Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four is an important and heroic figure in the Marvel Universe. Despite his heroics, we did witness a spectacular fall from grace for Reed in the Ultimate Comics universe, otherwise known as Earth 1610. In this universe, Magneto created a doomsday weapon called the Ultimatum Wave, which caused a tidal wave that killed thousands of people. This, combined with the stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal, caused Reed to snap and blow up his childhood home to fake his death, killing his family in the process. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes. He was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. Reed returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect. He killed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power and used antimatter to attack Washington DC, killing POTUS, his cabinet, and all of Congress. The Maker went on to do a lot of twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, proving that if not kept in check by a strong moral compass, Mr. Fantastic's amazing mind can be the ultimate source of terror.
Number 2. Space Punisher Hulk. Space Punisher Hulk has only appeared in 2 comic books, but despite that, he has shown that he is completely terrifying. For starters, he is a completely separate entity from Bruce Banner, whose body is literally trapped inside Space Punisher Hulk. This means that nothing that happens to Bruce Banner affects the Hulk. Space Punisher Hulk, while having all the powers of the Hulk, also has an extra set of arms and is quite a bit taller. He is described as a destructive killing machine, well known for destroying spaceships, defeating the Fantastic Four, ripping off the Thing's hand and tying up Mr. Fantastic in a knot in the process. He has taken out Doc Samson with his own hair, bit straight through Sabretooth, and de-lifed Deadpool by literally tearing off his head, which shouldn't actually work, but I digress. He defeated and ended the lives of 6 Watchers single-handedly, he broke the leader's back in combat, and he also ripped out Bruce Banner from his own chest. He is virtually invulnerable, seemingly indestructible and invincible. He can move faster than light and pass through barriers of existence and reality. The Hulk is scary on a regular day. Space Punisher Hulk? No thanks, I'm good.
Number 1. Spiders Man. On Earth 11,580, Peter Parker was taking a tour of a lab that was conducting radiation experiments on a colony of spiders. Peter fell into the spider habitat and was promptly devoured by the spiders. In an odd twist of fate not dissimilar to the villain Swarm, the spiders absorbed Peter's consciousness and became a hive mind that formed together to masquerade as a human and fight crime, thus becoming Spiders Man. Spiders Man fought crime for a time, but soon developed a taste for human flesh. The spiders managed to hide this for a time and were recruited by the superior Spider-Man in his multiversal quest to defeat the villainous Inheritors. He eventually betrayed Otto by joining forces with the Norman Osborn Spider-Man of Earth 44,145 to try and destroy the Web of Life. This plan failed, but Spiders Man did manage to spread his spiders across the multiverse, giving them a foothold in every different reality.
An intent Bat Baby. In Batman number 147, published in 1962, we are introduced to Bat Baby, offering a glimpse into the distinctiveness of Batman during the Silver Age of comics. Contrasting the modern portrayal of Batman as a brooding and conflicted loner, this story reveals a peculiar side of the Caped Crusader. The narrative unfolds as Batman and Robin infiltrate a criminal hideout, initially gaining the upper hand. However, the criminals manage to escape when their mad scientist deploys a de-aging ray on Batman, basically think sky-high pacifier, regressing him into a 4-year-old child. Remarkably though, Batman retains his adult intellect and physical strength. Rather than being dismayed by this transformation, Bruce embraces it, donning a miniaturized cape, cowl, and Batman-themed overalls to become Bat-Baby. The criminals attempted to ridicule him, but Bat-Baby uses his enhanced abilities to foil their plans, so yeah. It is worth noting that de-aging superheroes was a curious trend in this era as well, with characters like Superboy and Wonder Girl being popular variations of Superman and Wonder Woman. However, this takes that to a literal extreme. The concept of a baby Bruce Wayne fighting crime did not have lasting popularity, and Bat-Baby remains a singular appearance in DC Comics, which was in Batman number 147, but I think we can all kind of appreciate that. In at 9, Satan Batman. In this future incarnation, Damian Wayne assumes the role of Batman following the demise of the second Batman. Possessing supernatural abilities and the willingness to take lives, Damian believed that resorting to lethal methods was necessary to combat crime, setting him apart from any other members of the Bat family. Despite the efforts of Father James Gordon and Alfred to guide him towards a different path, Damian remained steadfast in his convictions. A heated argument with his father resulted in Damian severely injuring him with a dangerously close stab wound, leading to his expulsion from the Batcave by Alfred. During his tenure as Batman, Damian faced a formidable adversary in the form of Michael Lane, the former Azrael, driven by an unhinged obsession to destroy Batman under the influence of Simon Hurt. As chaos engulfed the planet, Gotham became a quarantine city overrun by Joker-affected inhabitants, and Talia al Ghul, Damian's mother, ordered the city's annihilation through a nuclear strike authorized by Simon Hurt, who had risen to the highest echelons of the American government. Remarkably, Damian survived the cataclysmic blast due to a pact he had made with Dr. Hurt, so I don't know what Simon was thinking, really, okay? He didn't think that one through. In at 8, Dark Claw. Logan Wayne is a combination of Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' death at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. All hail the North! His uncle was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, basically the Canadian FBI, and was ambushed and killed by poachers a short time after Logan's arrival in Canada. After the death of his uncle, Logan was sent to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X project, after that, the Canadian Super Soldier program, and it was here that Logan had adamantium bonded to his bones and learned of his meta-mutant nature. And since this is an amalgam, they are both considered metas and mutants because that's basically the same thing between the universes. The Weapon X project was terminated due to its dual failure. Logan was ineffective because he actually had a conscience, but this didn't stop him from being pretty damn bad. Having all the powers of Logan, as well as things like the Clawcopter and Clawmobile, and I'm not even kidding, this is in essence a superpowered Batman, which I think we all should know is pretty dope, although I wonder if he has a Claw credit card. In at 7, Bat-Mite. Bat-Mite was a mischievous imp who appeared as a small childlike man donning an ill-fitting Batman costume with a black lightning bolt symbol. Hailing from another dimension, Bat-Mite possessed nearly limitless magical powers. In his dimension, the resident imps idolized the heroes of Batman's world and would mimic their actions and adventures. Batman happened to be Bat-Mite's favorite hero, obviously, leading to the imp visiting him on multiple occasions, often orchestrating peculiar events just to witness his hero in action. Despite his admiration though, Bat-Mite was more of a bothersome pest than a supervillain, often realizing his actions had upset Batman and then leaving him alone. During his first visit to Earth, Bat-Mite used his magical abilities to enhance Batman and Robin's crime-fighting efforts, albeit causing more trouble than assistance, but Batman eventually requested that Bat-Mite apprehend the criminals himself. After fulfilling Batman's request, the imp complied and departed, vowing to return someday. Bat-Mite did reappear later, this time causing chaos, not only for Batman and Robin, but also for the newly introduced Batwoman. So yeah, I mean, he's an imp, and imps are always shifty, okay? We know that. It's been a thing. And at 6, Super Batman. When Dr. Wayne and Mrs. Wayne discover a baby named Kal-El in a mysterious spacecraft, they choose to raise him as their own child. They give him the name Bruce and instill him with a deep respect for all individuals regardless of social class or race. Mrs. Wayne, with her nurturing love, cultivates his heart, while Thomas Wayne, though emotionally reserved, proves to be a kind and compassionate father. Recognizing Kal-El's incredible abilities, his speed, agility, and unbreakable bones, Dr. Wayne focuses on pushing Bruce's mental limits rather than his physical ones, since, that's not really an issue. He imparts Bruce with the belief that cowards and bullies resort to violence, but Bruce, as someone exceptional, should aspire to be something higher, something better. Following the tragedy of his parents' death, Bruce withdraws from the world, finding solace in his parents' mansion. Consumed by a profound hatred for violence and death, the haunting images of death torment his sanity. However, one fateful day, a group of robbers invade his home. Bruce, unleashing his powers, brutally attacks them, tearing them apart with his heat vision. It is in this moment that Bruce realizes the potential of his abilities and resolves to utilize his powers for a greater purpose and adopts the identity of Batman, a symbol of justice and protection. So basically, it's if Superman was Bruce Wayne, which is dope as hell. It's from Superman Speeding Bullets, in case you were wondering. Check it out, it's actually really cool. Halfway through into number 5, John Paul Valley. John Paul Valley, also known as Azrael, was a vigilante who once operated in Gotham City. During a short period, he temporarily assumed the mantle of Batman after the original Dark Knight was incapacitated by Bane. However, his time as Batman was marred by a descent into insanity, leading to dire consequences. As Batman, John Paul succumbed to the darkness within himself, unleashing a brutal and merciless brand of justice upon minor criminals. He inflicted permanent damage to his adversaries, leaving them crippled and beyond recovery, and one such instance was when he ruthlessly assaulted the Tallyman, mistaking him for the original Batman and retaliating for an attempted assassination. In his tumultuous tenure as Batman, John Paul also thwarted the Trigger Twins during a train heist and confronted Mr. Freeze at the Gotham morgue. These confrontations further showcased his unpredictable and aggressive nature as he struggled to maintain control over his actions. Ultimately, John Paul's time as Batman came to an end as he was forcibly removed from the role, but he returned to his original identity as Azrael. His tenure as Dark Knight serves as a cautionary tale, but also he went insane and started seeing Bat-Mite, but not the real Bat-Mite. It's a whole other thing. It's weird. Man, it's weird. And at 4, Vampire Batman. As Batman investigates a series of gruesome deaths in Gotham City, only to discover that the killer is none other than Dracula, the legendary vampire. Not even a joke, actually a thing. Batman teams up with a rogue vampire named Tanya to stop Dracula and his brood from terrorizing the city, but to do so, Tanya provides Batman with a blood substitute after turning him into a vampire to spare him from the cycle of death and killing that comes with being bitten, because you have to drink blood in order to keep living, so they give him a blood substitute to kind of stop that so he has it inside himself. And in order to destroy Dracula's minions, Batman lures them into the Batcave where Tanya and his followers engage them in combat. Batman detonates multiple explosives in the cave, destroying the Wayne Manor and exposing the cave to sunlight, which ultimately kills all the vampires within it. Batman then confronts Dracula on his own and impales the vampire lord on a tree that has been struck by lightning, because this is supernatural and you need something more than just chopping their heads off. This act, however, comes at the cost of Batman's humanity as Dracula drains the last of his blood. Nevertheless, Batman assured his friend Alfred that he had nothing to fear, because as Batman with new vampiric powers, he will live on forever. But I'm pretty sure that this doesn't go well, and I'm pretty sure he tries to take over the world. Don't quote me on that, but if you want to know for yourself, check out Batman and Dracula Red Reign. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Elliot Ness. Elliot Ness, a dedicated federal agent, was entrusted with the formidable task of dismantling the criminal empire of Al Capone during the era of Prohibition in Chicago. And this is also a real thing. This actually happened. But in this story, he was leading a team comprising of Danny Rasher, Frank Basil, and George Koken. They became renowned as the Untouchables, earning the moniker bestowed upon them by the press. Despite their unwavering determination, they found themselves constantly constrained by legal limitations in their pursuit of justice. Driven by an unyielding desire to rid the city of crime, though, Ness eventually adopted a clandestine alter ego and transformed into the Batman. Operating under the cover of darkness, his vigilante persona straddled the fine line between law enforcement and vigilantism. This dual role allowed him to operate outside of the confines of the law, using unconventional means to bring down the criminals who eluded traditional justice. But since he was actually a federal agent, he was able to, do things enough so that they couldn't just say, hey, he's a vigilante, this doesn't count. Elliot Ness, the federal agent turned into a masked crusader, undertook the mantle of Batman to confront the criminal underworld both within and outside the boundaries of the law, embodying a symbol of unwavering justice, but who also hunts Kronos with Dean Winchester on the weekends. But ultimately, in at number 2, Zur-En-Arrh. The enigmatic phrase Zur-En-Arrh began appearing throughout the streets and dark alleys of Gotham City, often accompanying Batman's encounters with criminals like the Joker. As time passed, the phrase continued to manifest, typically as graffiti in the background, until one fateful encounter with the Black Glove who shattered Batman's mind. Various leader Simon Hurt exploited a deep-seated psychological trauma within Batman, triggering a mental breakdown. In the wake of this devastating event, it was unveiled that Batman had constructed a backup personality dormant within his subconscious for years, awaiting the activation code Zur-En-Arrh. This alternate persona transformed Bruce into a deranged Batman that called himself Zur-En-Arrh, which is a twisted reflection of his former self. Empowered by the persona of Zur-En-Arrh, Batman confronted the Black Glove at Arkham Asylum, where they sought to wager his life in a treacherous gambling game. He also faced off against the Joker, but despite his valiant efforts, he ultimately succumbed to defeat, entombed alive within the asylum's graveyard. That's so messed up. That's insane, dude. God. And finally, in at number 1, Lovecraft Batman. After witnessing the brutal death of his parents during childhood, Bruce Wayne embarked on a relentless quest spanning 2 decades to unravel the mysteries of criminal behavior. However, everything takes a dramatic turn when he, along with his trusted companions, venture to the Antarctic in search of an expedition team led by the eccentric socialite Oswald Cobblepot. What awaits Bruce in this frozen realm, though, is a peculiar sight. Cobblepot wandering alone in the icy wilderness, while one of his crewmen, Grendon, had transformed into a lifeless yet animated corpse, unearthing a creature trapped within the frozen depths. Driven by the sense of duty, Bruce seized the opportunity to bring Grendon and the unearthed creature back to Gotham under his custody. However, as the backdrop of the crime-ridden Roaring '20s sets the stage, Bruce becomes entangled in a web of connections that link Gotham's dark past to his own father, his parents' death, and a slain scientist named Kirk Longstrom, who possesses the ability to communicate with bats. Through his investigations, Bruce discovers that he alone possesses the power to thwart the sinister cult of Ghoul, who seek to bring out the demise of Gotham and the world itself. Basically, this is Lovecraft Batman, okay? Think Cthulhu but Batman, and that's what you get.